So I'm not the richest guy in the world, and as you guys know from a few of my stories on Curated TV and here on VINwiki, I actually bought my dream Diablo before I even owned a house for my family and kids. So I am all in to what I do. And part of Curated is I only buy what I love. I buy what I believe in. I get super excited every time we get a new car. And I think that's why we've been able to be somewhat successful over the past 5, 6, 7 years is it's purely out of passion. I would say, there's so many times, and I've talked about this a million times, where I get sad when a car leaves, and there's some cars that you just have to keep. Unfortunately, I'm not the richest guy in the world, and luckily, I have three incredible business partners. Two of them are very well off, and they're not the biggest car guys in the world, but they like cars. They more love the business and love working with Jordy and Jordy and myself, my business partner. So over the past few years, we've had some really incredible cars join us, and I will say that many times I regret selling some of the manual Murcielagos, and I regret selling some of these cars. So I recently, in the past year and a half, have convinced my two wealthy partners to help us keep some cars and put some cars away and create a curated collection. Now, I haven't paid for these cars yet, but I have some sort of a agreement with them that at some point I'm going to try to pay these cars off or do some deal with them, and we'll get to that one day. But what I've essentially tried to do is keep cars that I know you can never replace. There's three cars. One of the cars, the first car, is the Nero Metallizzato 25th Countach anniversary with Rosso interior. When this car first arrived, I had bought a few cars out of the collection of Marcel, and Marcel is a very passionate Lamborghini collector. He's based in the Netherlands, and he's had some great cars over the years. Miura SV and Diablo SC30 and all these really spectacular cars. And his attention to detail and perfection and preservation is just really admirable. He's always servicing his cars. All of his cars, the leather smells new. All of the zinc plating's perfect. He's not taking his cars, washing them, or letting them get rained on. They're in climate-controlled garages. So anything he has, I almost don't even need to inspect it. I'll just buy it. And probably about 7, 8 months ago, Marcel offered me a Countach 25th Anniversario. And this was a beautiful car that was a very rare spec. It was like this charcoal color over a bright red interior with black piping. And when I first saw the photos, a colleague of ours, Joe Saki, who's another Countach expert, he basically, was like, John, you have to buy this car. Like, it's a must. And, I went back and forth with Joe and I said, okay, I think it's a fair price for inventory and, I'll figure it out. But the more I thought about it, I said, man, this car's just beautiful. It was like 800, 900 miles, but the tires were brand new. He had the original tires on the side. He had the original exhaust, and he put out this beautiful sport exhaust, and just everything was tight. Even the cigarette lighter had the original wrapper from the factory. I mean, everything was just perfect. So I was excited. We flew the car in, and once the car arrived at Curated, I realized it was probably the best condition Countach I'd ever seen. Everything was tight. Everything worked. I didn't even need to do anything to it. Imagine I drove it up and down the street. The AC worked. Everything worked. The lights worked. The radio worked. That's pretty rare when we get Countaches in. Normally we have to spend $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 going through everything. And this car was just turnkey. And it looked like the way it did in 1989. So the other cool part about the Countach 25th anniversary that we got is in the US, all the Countach 25th anniversaries are fuel-injected cars. In Europe and the rest of the world, they actually made a good amount in the downdraft carbureted spec, which is the higher horsepower, more radical, faster revving car. So this car sort of checks every box, And listen, I think when I tell people that, I wanted to keep a 25th anniversary, they freak out because it was historically the most undesirable car. But I think it's aged very well, and I think a downdraft 25th anniversary in that color with no wing, Euro bumper, just looks stunning. So I immediately went to the partners and I said, guys, we have to figure this out. We have to keep this car. So that's one of the cars. The second car is a car that I almost lost. It's an incredible story. It's a car that I chased for many years. There's a great story about it, specifically on Curated TV, where we talk about me chasing this car. It was sort of a myth. It was like a car that a guy talked about in a forum once, and he posted a picture. Everyone freaked out in this forum, and then he disappeared. And it was a one-owner 900-mile Giallo Perlato Diablo SV Monterey. And this is probably the most crazy story because a one-of-one color that I later found out from a famous Lamborghini detailer that it's the only Lamborghini ever painted in this color. When the sun hits it, it goes from green to white to silver to yellow. Heavy, heavy metallics. And the reason they never painted another car in this color is because it couldn't match the color. So apparently this car, he bought it brand new, put it in his garage, and he left it there. Climate controlled garage, and the car was absolutely perfect. The second he sent me a few photos of it, now this is a guy that I sort of stalked for about 6-7 years, and he finally agreed to sell it to me because he's like, you're absolutely insane. He did agree to sell it to me because I said, listen, I'm going to try to keep this car, which was very sincere at the time. We paid a world record price for it at the time. Once the car arrived, everyone freaked out. I had a really good client. He ended up purchasing the car. We started talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going to start driving this car. I was like, you're what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to drive this car. And I'm like thinking in my head, there's so many other cars you can drive. This is not the car you drive. It has the original tires, original paint. There's no stone chips. It's 900 miles. Like, the exhaust hasn't even gone through its heat stage yet. Like, what are we doing? So we ended up negotiating. I had another car incoming, another trade, and I said, listen, we have to figure this out. I sold it to him for this crazy price, almost $800,000. But I said, listen, we have to figure this out where we take it back on trade, and you can't drive this car. So I ended up making him happy. He got another Diablo that he did want, and we had the opportunity to keep this car. So I convinced the partners. I said, you guys have to keep this car. We'll never see anything else like it again. And we recently showed that car at the bridge, and just people went nuts because there's nothing else like it. The third car, it's a car that I bought a long, long time ago. And I bought it with a client with the goal of one day importing it into the US and selling it. But I bought it because it's probably one of the coolest colors ever on a Murcielago. It is one of the very rare Grigio Telesto LP640s, and it's not just any LP640, it is a manual transmission LP640. Now, the problem with the car is it's a European spec car, so it's actually been sitting at the Lamborghini factory. We had them do a major service, we had them do a certification on the car. And the problem with LP640 is, again, it's $200,000 and potentially 2 years to import into the US. So I had a ton of clients that were interested in buying the car, and at one point, we actually agreed on a selling price a few years ago for, I forget the exact price, but it was a little under $500,000. We were selling it to a US buyer. We actually sold the car. We technically, Curated bought the car from a great client of ours. We gave him his profit, and we were selling it to this other gentleman, and he never closed. Now, in that process, it was sort of bittersweet. I was like, man, I'm sort of glad he never closed, because what are the chances of finding another really nice low mileage LP640 coupe manual that's not $1 million or not $900,000 or not $1.5 million? So I went back to the partners and I said, guys, we're never going to find this again. This is something we have to put away. And it's the color of Batman's car. I mean, let's face it, it's just so good. This car is a 7,000 mile car. I believe it has Q-Centera inserts, and they're in Alcantara, so it's just a really cool spec as well. We got to figure out how to bring it to the US legally. We will at some point. Right now, it's sitting at the Lamborghini factory. They were finishing a service, but it will be something that we will never sell because I just think it's too good. So if you had to ask me where I'm putting all of, not technically my money, but investment money, I just think there's no better way than classic vintage manual Lamborghinis cars. I just think Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, they're just way too undervalued. I think there's a whole new generation that are in love with these cars. I think there's a whole generation of Ferrari collectors that are now saying, why are these cars so cheap? It just doesn't make sense. And when you look at production numbers of vintage Lamborghinis and you look at the production numbers of Ferraris and Porsches, these cars are just so rare. So that's our private collection, the curated collection, and we hopefully will add a few more cars over the next couple of years, but I think we've done pretty damn good so far.
Did you know that you can search Facebook Marketplace nationally? Auto Tempest has a tool for that, but there's a couple tricks that you need to know. By now we all know that Auto Tempest is the most powerful way to shop for your next car because they allow you to compile the results from all the major listing sites into one place. But after you perform one of their nationwide searches, scroll down to these links and click on the Facebook button. Now, once you've set your results to nationwide, you can follow their instructions and it will allow you to not just limit your search to 100 or 500 miles like Facebook lets you do through their site or their mobile app, but they'll let you instantly open tabs to the entire country and help you to find exactly the car that you're looking for. I just used it to find the cheapest Ferrari GTC4 Lusso on the planet, and I traded the CarTrek R8 for it. You never know where the perfect car for your search is hiding, but we do know that Auto Tempest is the best way to track it down.